Interaction in second language acquisition. Once the focus was on the role of interaction in second language acquisition, the researchers started to pay attention to how those who are more proficient in language spoke to people who were learning the new language. So, may it be an adult speaking to a child, or it might be an expert in the language speaking to someone who has just begun speaking the language. You yourself must have noticed that the way you speak to a little child is consistently different from how you speak to your fellow person. So, in the 1970s and 1980s, there were several studies which actually demonstrated that the talk addressed to the learners was typically grammatically regular. The grammar was regular, however, it was simple linguistically. So, there was a narrower range of vocabulary. The sentences were typically short. And similarly, the complexity of the sentences or the utterances were also paid attention. That is, they were made simple, more simple for the understanding of the learner. However, when it came to understanding what was the degree of simplification, or what was the nature of simplification, it all became very puzzling, because depending on the context, depending on the adult, depending on the age of the learner, this was all very variant. However, the problem was also that the description of foreign talk discourse, what it came to be known as, was not really attempted. And neither was its impact on second language acquisition. So the question was, if we speak differently to a person who is learning a second language, what impact does it have on the learning of the second language? And does it aid the comprehension of the child or the adult who is just beginning to learn that language? So Long in 1983, he proposes a step-by-step approach to understanding the role of this foreign discourse talk or the child-centered talk, and wants to see, if we want to see, what its role is in the learning of the second language. He says, first of all, one has to establish that linguistic conversational adjustments, like how we modify the language to make it simpler, promotes comprehension of input. That means it makes it easier for the person listening to understand what is being talked about. The second thing, he said, we need to establish then that this comprehensible input, that is the talk that is coming to the learner, which he or she is able to understand, actually leads to acquisition, that is learning of the new language. Third, he said, we also need to then deduce or to generalize from everything that linguistic conversational adjustments that we make, that is, when we make the language simpler for the person to understand, then this will lead to promotion of acquisition in the end. That is, the whole process will then lead to better language learning. So, A, how does it help comprehension, understanding of what is being said, and then this understanding, how does it promote the acquisition or the learning of the second language. Evidence in his studies supported the argument that linguistic modifications, that is, when the language was made simpler, did promote comprehensible input or the comprehension or understanding of what was being said. And one of his studies actually showed that when lectures were delivered in a modified language, that is, at a slower pace, using simpler language, then they were easier for people to understand, and it was expected, though not established, that it might lead to the acquisition or the learning of the second language. However, there was a problem in this because if we are in this framework, we are thinking of the learners as passively imbibing the language that is coming to them, that passively just accepting the language that is coming to them and not actually processing them. So this is more towards Gresham's theory, and this also draws the same critique that we brought for Gresham's theory of input. The main critique was that he does not tell how this comprehensible input is actually processed in the minds of the learners to learn the language. So the whole process was not described, and that is why we see that Long later on moved on to his another hypothesis, taking inspiration from Gresham.